It's April 2025 and the US stock market is in a tailspin again. The S&P 500, Dow Jones, and Nasdaq have all taken major hits this week, with some calling it the worst stretch since the early days of the pandemic. Just yesterday, the Dow dropped nearly 500 points and the S&P 500 is flirting with correction territory, down over 9% from its February high. Investors are rattled and the word on everyone's lips: uncertainty. So, what's driving this market mayhem? The big trigger seems to be the sweeping tariffs President Trump rolled out earlier this month. If you've been following US updates, you know we've been tracking this story closely. On April 2nd, Trump announced what he called Liberation Day tariffs, at 10% baseline on nearly all imports, with some countries facing reciprocal tariffs as high as 20%. The goal to boost American manufacturing and bring wealth back home. But the fallout? Well, let's just say it's been a wild ride. These tariffs are about making America rich again, and it's happening. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much, a little disturbance. That's one way to put it. Since that announcement, global markets have been in a frenzy. Europe's Stoxx 600 index dropped nearly 3%, Japan's Nikkei sank, and even the US dollar took a hit, sliding to its lowest level since October. Companies like Apple, Nike, and Best Buy, big names that rely on global supply chains, saw their stocks plummet, with Apple alone losing over $300 billion in market value in a single day. Now, tariffs aren't new, and neither is the debate around them. Supporters say they protect American jobs and force other countries to play fair. Critics, they warn tariffs jack up prices for consumers and spark trade wars that hurt everyone. Right now, it looks like the critics might have a point. Trading partners like the EU and China aren't sitting quietly, they're hitting back with their own tariffs, and the ripple effects are hammering markets worldwide. Here's the deal: when you slap tariffs on imports, it makes foreign goods more expensive. That can push companies to move production to the US, but it also means higher costs for everything from sneakers to smartphones. When prices rise, consumers, aka you and me, feel the pinch. Add in fears of a global trade war, and you've got a recipe for Wall Street panic. But it's not just numbers on a screen. This market tumble is shaking confidence in the economy. Betting markets are now giving a 50% chance of a US recession in 2025, up from just 20% a month ago. And that brings us to the White House, where things are getting, let's say, interesting. Yesterday, the White House called an emergency briefing to address the market chaos. The room was packed, the tension was high, and everyone wanted answers. Was the administration caught off guard? Were they doubling down on tariffs, or could it be the president is focused on restoring American greatness? These market fluctuations are a snapshot of a moment in time. We're in a period of economic transition, and Americans should trust in President Trump's vision, a snapshot of a moment. That's one way to spin it. But behind the scenes, sources say the mood in the White House is anything but calm. The title of today: As Video-Terrified Trump Folds in Panic, comes from chatter online and in some circles that the administration is scrambling to contain the fallout. Now, let's be clear, there's no hard evidence Trump himself is panicking. The guy's been through plenty of storms before. But the pressure, it's real. Here's what we know. The emergency briefing wasn't just about reassuring Wall Street. It was about signaling to the world that the US isn't backing down. Or is it? Just 2 days ago, Trump surprised markets by announcing a 90-day pause on some tariffs, except for those on China. Stocks skyrocketed that day, with the S&P 500 bouncing back hard. But then yesterday, he hinted at ramping up pressure on China again, and boom, markets tanked all over again. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom. We've got $6 or $7 trillion coming in from these tariffs. You're not going to know where to spend all that money. 6 or 7 trillion. That's a bold claim, and economists are raising their eyebrows. Most estimates say tariffs might bring in hundreds of billions at best, but nowhere near that figure. And here's the catch: even if they do rake in cash, higher prices could wipe out those gains for everyday Americans. So, is the White House folding under pressure? Not exactly, but they're definitely feeling the heat. Let's break it down. April 2nd, tariffs announced, markets dip. April 7th, Trump threatens 50% tariffs on China, markets wobble. April 9th, he pauses some tariffs, markets soar. And now, April 10th, mixed signals, and we're back to a sell-off. It's like a roller coaster, and investors are getting whiplash. emergency briefing was meant to steady the ship, but it left more questions than answers. So why should you care about all this? Sure, Wall Street's freaking out and the White House is in overdrive, but what does it mean for you? First off, let's talk prices. Tariffs make imported goods cost more, and companies don't always eat those costs, they pass them on to us. Analysts estimate a farm-made car could jump by $15,000 under these tariffs. Even a US-made car might cost $8,000 more because of pricier parts. Groceries, clothes, electronics, you name it, it could get more expensive. With inflation already a sore spot for many, that's not great news. Next up, jobs. The White House says tariffs will bring manufacturing back to the US, creating tons of jobs. And that's possible over time. But in the short term, companies facing higher costs might cut back, especially small businesses that can't absorb the hit. The Russell 2000, an index of smaller companies, dropped 6.5% this week alone, signaling trouble for Main Street, not just Wall Street. Then there's the global angle. The EU, China, and others are already retaliating with their own tariffs. That could hurt American exporters, think farmers, tech companies, even whiskey makers. Remember the last trade war? Soybean farmers got crushed when China slapped tariffs on US crops. We could see a repeat if this escalates. Let's not forget the recession fears. A Morgan report gave the US a 40% chance of a recession before the tariffs even hit. Now some say it's closer to 50-50. If consumer spending slows, businesses struggle, and trade wars spiral, we could be in for a rough ride. But here's the flip side. If the White House can negotiate deals with trading partners like they claim 70 countries are trying to do, maybe a gift. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Didn't Trump promise a golden age? He did. And his team's still banking on tax cuts and deregulation to spark growth. But the market's telling a different story right now, and it's not a happy one. The question is, can they turn this around, or are we headed for trouble? Let's get real. Is Trump terrified and folding in panic, as the headlines scream? Or is this all part of a bigger plan? Trump's built a career on bold moves and doubling down. Tariffs are his signature play. He used them in his first term, and they did bring some manufacturing jobs back. He's betting they'll work again, framing this as a fight to make America rich. And he's not alone. Supporters argue the market's overreacting and once trade deals kick in, we'll see a boom. But the other side, they're pointing to the chaos. Markets hate uncertainty, and Trump's mixed signals, tariffs on, tariffs off, China's the bad guy, no wait, everyone's negotiating, aren't helping. The emergency briefing felt more like damage control than a victory lap. In that video he shared on Truth Social hinting at crashing markets on purpose. Yeah, his economic advisor had to walk that one back real quick. Here's the truth. Nobody knows how this plays out yet. Tariffs could force other countries to cut better deals, or they could tank the global economy. Trump could come out looking like a genius, or he could face a backlash if prices soar and jobs don't materialize. What's clear is the White House is under pressure to show results, not just talk about them. And that's where we're at, folks. The stock market's reeling, the White House is scrambling, and the world's watching to see what happens next. Will Trump's tariffs save the day, or are we in for a bumpy ride? I want to hear your take. Drop a comment below and tell me, are you worried about the economy? Or do you think this is all overblown? And hey, if you want to stay on top of this story, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single US Updates video.